Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you guys are well. This is another video on drawing my life. And this time I'm going to be talking about mistakes I made whilst studying, which if I look back in now and I wish I could go back in time, these are the things that I probably would have changed whilst I was studying. So mistakes, I mean, everyone when they study, they're always developing. They always start off premature and then they improve and then they slowly mature as they go along. So whilst I was studying, I remember that there were many things that I used to do, whether it was to do with making notes or memorization or even reading up, which looking back now, I could have spent that time more efficiently, you could say more productively as well, and could have learnt other things or could have focused on certain things which were more important to me at that time. So okay, so I'm going to make a list of these things. First and foremostly is making notes. Now this is something some of you guys are probably, it's second nature to you guys to make notes. You're making notes of everything, single thing that the teacher says. We actually had students, I remember when I was studying, there was actually students that used to write down every single thing that the teacher would say. They're writing, even the coughs, and the sneezes and the shouting and answering the phone even, they would write every single thing down, and this was very beneficial. You can imagine if you've written down every single thing that the teacher has said, you're not really going to miss anything, are you? And not everyone's memory is perfect and can retain every single letter and piece of information. So, and in them days as well, we never used to have dictaphones as well. So you got dictaphones nowadays as well. But making notes is very important for two reasons. One is you retain the information, and number two is by writing it down in your own hands. So for some reason your mind seems to memorize it better. Okay, so you begin to memorize better, you begin to learn more. So writing down is very important. But I must add one thing here, which is that when you're making notes, you don't have to make notes of every single thing, right? Make notes of the main issues that the teacher mentions, the main points. The teacher might say to you, okay, this is an important thing to remember, or he might explain something which he says that, you know, it's going to be difficult for you to read this up. So make notes of the most important things, and you'll see that it will help you a lot. Okay, that's the first. Second is when you're studying, then it's very important to read up about the subject. Okay, so very important that you read up about the subject that you're studying. So let's say, for example, you're going to go into studying hadith. Okay, so hadith is the science of narrations of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions. So now you want to go into studying hadith. What you have to remember is you need to understand what you're getting yourself into. So you read articles, okay, read books, watch documentaries, listen to talks regarding hadith. So at least when you're studying hadith, in your mind you'll have this image of hadith, or this blueprint of hadith, and you know what hadith is roughly about. So now when you actually approach the science of hadith, it becomes very much easier. Now what I have found is that students who have studied college, university and other institutes, when they start studying Islamic sciences, what they tend to generally find, or what we generally find, is that they're more studious and more interested in studying the science than those who actually don't really have any background in studying. And the reason simply is because they read up things quite a lot. So like they read extra reading, they have material, and they're always asking the teacher for things that they can read outside the lesson as well. So again, reading is very important before you approach anything, and this helps you memorize things much more easier. And this brings me to the next topic, which is, okay, so memory. How much memory must you put into studying? A lot of people underestimate anything that they study when they especially when they study Islamic sciences. They don't really focus on memorization, and they usually, you have well, when I was studying, there was I used to always kind of divide into two. Used to have that's not horns, by the way. I used to divide it into trying to understand and memorize. and I used to focus more on understanding than memorizing. Probably that's how we've been brought up, that we try to understand things more than we memorize, whereas there has to be the correct balance between memorization and understanding. So you have to understand certain things or understand everything, and you have to memorize certain things as well. Now, a mistake that I used to make was, let's say for example I had a text. What I would try and do is I would sometimes try and actually memorize the entire text. You know, I've actually memorized certain books as well, texts cover to cover. Now it's beneficial. My teacher used to say to me that you should memorize one text for every science. So for every science that you study, one text you should memorize it inside out. And this way what happens is that once you've memorized, let's say, one text, the other texts that you study actually build upon this. So you have a framework in your mind, you have this image in your mind of all the topics, and then it's easier for you to develop on that. However, what I would say is not all students are able to do this, and I mean it's good, alhamdulillah, but I would say that if you can memorize the most important aspects of this text, right? So the most important things, let's say for example, use your highlighter, highlight the most important things. There might be 3 lines in the whole page, or even 1 line in the whole page, which requires memorization. Not every single thing needs memorization, only the important things. That should be enough. Okay, and the rest can be understood and put into your own words. That's totally fine. Certain sciences will actually require more memorization than others, like maybe Arabic, certain branches of Arabic, Hadith, memorizing ayats of the Quran. Okay, so memorization is very important, and remember, memorization will develop after a time. So we're not usually in this society, we're not used to memorizing lots of things, so it's a bit difficult at the beginning, but don't worry, take it step by step. Memorize a bit. You know, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, it's narrated that they used to memorize 5 ayats a day. So you can imagine, you memorize 5 ayats a day, this is very easy. It slowly develops and you start becoming stronger in memorizing things later on. Okay, that's that. Now the fourth is going over your lesson. Okay, so going over your lesson, one of the things that I did make a mistake in the beginning, which I didn't really know about, was about going over lessons. So let's say for example I have a lesson of fiqh. Alright, now the lesson of fiqh starts here. So before the lesson, whenever you want, you should go over the lesson. So study the text, take the text that you're going to study in class, read through it, try to understand the text, and usually you do study texts, so this is why it's easier. If you have a science or subject where there's no text and the teacher just dictates and you have to write that down, then it's a bit difficult. That would require a bit of reading beforehand, but you usually have texts. So go through the text, highlight things which are important, make notes in the footnotes, on the sides and the margins. Try to understand all the words, everything. Now I would say usually if you understand from 40 to 60% of it, that is quite a lot. 40 to 60%, if you can understand that much of a text before lesson, that would be quite a lot. The rest, the other remainder 40% or whatever, that's something that you can cover in class. Wait for the teacher to explain it to you. Now after you've done that, so you've gone through it before lesson, and then you go to the lesson and the teacher explains it. After the lesson you should go over it again. Okay, so you go over the text, the explanation of the teacher as well. So you've got the teacher's footnotes or the teacher's explanation of the text. So you go over that, and then you've gone over it 3 times now. So something's bound to sit in your head. So after that, usually you start to understand it much more better than if you were just to attend the lesson. So this is why these 3, 1, 2, 3, these are the 3 golden steps for learning anything thoroughly. Okay, so that's that. Number 5. Okay, number 5 is ask. Okay, ask people who have studied the science. So let's say for example it's fiqh. Now when I studied fiqh, I didn't really ask anyone, which was a mistake I made. Later on I realized that I should have been asking people about the science. And what I should have done was I should have gone to people who have already studied fiqh, and I should have asked them what is fiqh about, and you know, you can ask them to give you their experience as well, and some of them will tell you about what fiqh is about. They'll give you overview. Some of them will probably tell you certain issues that will occur in fiqh. Some of them will tell you about different approaches of fiqh. They'll tell you about what fiqh is about. They'll tell you when fiqh started. All these questions. All right, so you'll have all these questions and things that you'll be asking them, and they'll be explaining to you. So this will give you an overview of what fiqh is about. Now, when you have an overview of what fiqh is about, you become more curious and intrigued about the subject. So now, instead of just going to the lesson, this time you'll have these ideas in your mind, which you've gathered from other people, and it'll make fiqh more interesting. Okay, so that's very, very important. And with this can go the reading that we said earlier. So reading up on the subject, you know, you can be included in this as well. And this is something that I even do till today. If I'm studying a subject, I'll read the introduction. I'll probably even ask people on internet forums, on groups, ask other scholars, experts. So once I've understood something outside thoroughly, then I'll approach the subject. I'll just approach the book I'm reading, and it makes more sense. It contextualizes everything, and it makes me less prone to making, you know, errors. Okay, last but not least is when this is actually connected to the revision part of it, is questions. Okay, now some people will think, question, no need for questions if I understand it. No, very, very important that you have questions. Now, the way you actually create questions is you brainstorm. So let's say the subject is fiqh. Okay, now what you do is you brainstorm. You say, okay, what is fiqh about? When did it come about? All these questions you ask. Where does fiqh exist? Why do we have fiqh? What does it mean? What's the meaning of fiqh? How many scholars are there of fiqh? Who is a scholar of fiqh? Can anyone be someone who studies fiqh? What's the content of fiqh? What's the difference between fiqh and the Quran? So you brainstorm fiqh, you know, and you exhaust your mind, and then what you do is those questions or those points that you've just written down, which you can answer yourself, you answer them. So let's say, okay, I know what fiqh means, right? So I don't need that. I know where fiqh came about. Okay, I don't need that. I know when fiqh came about. So the things that you know, or you think that you know, you can cross them off, and the ones that you're left with, you circle them, and then you say, right, I'm going to ask the teacher this tomorrow if he doesn't cover that. So this actually creates intrigue, it creates curiosity, and this is what studying is all about, is your questions that you have in your mind are answered. Now, if you go to a lesson and you study that subject and the teacher explains everything, and you have no questions at all, let's say the teacher explained 10 things, and those 10 things you've never heard of them before, you've had no questions about them ever, it's very unlikely that those 10 things are going to stay in your mind, and you would have no, you know, interaction with those 10 things later on after you've studied them. But if you've actually thought about the 10 things thoroughly, and then you go to approach the teacher, it's more likely that now you'll be intrigued and you'll want to know more. So this is why, you know, if I could go back in time, guys, you know, these are the things that I would have done, and I truly believe that my studying would become more efficient, more productive. And the reason I made this clip is so that you guys can benefit from this as well, inshallah. If you have any other tips or any other you know, methods, techniques of studying which you think would be beneficial, people, put it in the comments below. And if you have any suggestions, please add them in the comments. Subscribe to the channel as well. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.